Hi besties, how is your wrap-up binging going? Monthly book recs equals my monthly surge in dopamine. And those are the facts. It's time once again to rant and rave about the books I read over the previous month. In April, I read 7 books, because it took me like half a month to read one book. Some months are just that way. I had 1 3, 1 3.25, 2 4, 1 4.5, 1 4.75, and 1 5-star reads. I think I did all that right. Watch that like not even be 7. Those are probably my most spread out reads to date. Let's get started. My lowest rated of the month was Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, Matthew Perry's memoir. I gave this 3 stars. If you really want to catch me on a technicality, I did actually finish this yesterday, but since I read the majority of the book in April, in my mind, it's an April read. I wasn't really planning on reading this month, but then my Libby hold for the audiobook came in and I was like, well, I guess it's time. Although I have the physical copy here, I actually decided to listen to this on audio after one of you guys suggested that I do that, and thank God I did. What would I do without you guys to steer me in the right direction? The only downfall to listening to the audiobook is that since the story isn't told chronologically, it kind of made the overall novel, which was already hard to follow, even more hard to follow since you couldn't flip back to reference any dates or anything like that. But that was just a small price to pay. This memoir is for fans of Matthew Perry. If I was not already a fan of his work, I probably would have rated it lower out of frustration of the repetitiveness. It's almost like Matthew Perry took his diary and published it without any editing or refining. And like, sure, it's his memoir, it's his life story, but I don't think we need 10 different anecdotes that drive the same point home. Matthew Perry has obviously been through a lot and he didn't hold back in portraying that. I was surprised with how raw he was in here. And a lot of the things he gets into don't paint him in the best light, but I appreciated how honest he was and how he took responsibility for his actions. Oh my god, this memoir depicts life with an addiction in such a realistic and vulnerable way that I feel anyone who has had mental health struggles could relate to in some way. Obviously proceed with caution because this content could be triggering for some, but I really enjoyed learning about Matthew Perry's life and especially the history around Friends, this quintessential sitcoms amongst sitcoms. I love sitcoms, they make up 90% of the TV I watch. Because I physically cannot watch TV without multitasking. I'm not even kidding, I get bored. I can sit down and read a book for 2 hours, but I can't sit down and watch TV for 2 hours. Make it make sense. But since sitcoms aren't too plot heavy, I still feel like I can watch them, understand what's going on, have a fun time while also doing something else, such as playing Sims. That's my go-to Friday evening right there. Anyways, this memoir was decent. I wouldn't read again, but I'm still glad I read it. I won't spend too long on this next novel since my last video was dedicated to this book and another book I'll talk briefly about in a bit. Most of y'all probably know I gave Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn 3.25 stars. Although I rated this book kind of low, I still have a lot of respect for it and what it has brought to the thriller genre as a whole, but I just don't think it aged well. In my opinion, Sharp Objects, Gillian Flynn's debut novel, aged better. That book had more unique elements to me, whereas this book is such a run-of-the-mill missing women's book. So much so that I debated whether or not I really wanted to read the extra exclusive chapters that were included at the end of my book. I was like, I'd rather not, but I guess I will in case I miss out on something. That something turned out to be nothing. There's a review in here that I couldn't agree more to. It describes the book as a mystery whose resolution is every bit as troubling as its beginning. This book is one that doesn't wrap up everything in a nice neat bow, which I actually really liked for this particular novel. You have to be careful with those kinds of endings. This one didn't lean too far into cliffhanger territory, but it still left some things open-ended and up to interpretation. Okay, let's talk about The Egg Book, which I gave 4 stars to, aka The House We Grew Up In by Lisa Jewell. I knew I had to read this over Easter since the story heavily revolves around Easter, and guys, the vibes. Stunning. If you want to read this book, saving this till next Easter is the way to go. I promise you that is prime time to consume this. Oh my god, I was transported back to all of the Easter egg hunts and the Easter dinners of my childhood. I could practically taste those Cadbury eggs. This thriller is a duo timeline story that follows the Bird family. In present day, Mother Bird has just passed away, and so one of her daughters takes it upon herself to sort out all of her mother's belongings. Now, it has been a few years since that daughter, or the rest of her family for that matter, has been to their childhood house. Since the family hasn't had had the best relationship with each other ever since that one fateful Easter many years prior. Still, the daughter knows she's going to have her work cut out for her since her mother has always been a bit of a hoarder. But once she gets there and opens the door, she is greeted with floor-to-ceiling junk. Like there's no kitchen anymore. No one's had a home-cooked meal in this house in over a decade. So over the story, we not only follow the Bird family as they try to figure out what happened to their mother, but also what led to the family breaking apart in the first place. This is another slower-paced thriller, and I wouldn't say there are many thrilling aspects. It read more so like a literary fiction character-focused novel than a thriller. And so if I was in the mood for an edge-of-your-seat thriller, yeah, I probably would have been disappointed. But I actually quite enjoyed learning about and dissecting this peculiar family. I did mentally faceplant a few times while reading this because we had this one character who was like the only insightful one. And whenever she brought up her opinion, it would make perfect sense to us readers, but the rest of her family would be like, nah, I don't think so. You're wrong on that one. Before this novel, I had not read a book featuring a hoarder as a main character, but I really enjoyed seeing the mentality behind this lifestyle that I personally try to avoid, though maybe one day I'll become like a book hoarder. You know, I have not reached that point yet, but then again, what's the difference between being a book hoarder and just owning a library? No, my necklace. I hate that so much about jewelry. It bugs me to no end. Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson quenched my random fantasy thirst I had at the beginning of the month. Where do I even begin? So much goes on in this book. This fantasy novel starts off with following Cassie, an ex-thief who is now one of the top soldiers of the Queen's Guard, and she and some of her fellow guards are sent to the Ballinger's kingdom. I say kingdom because they aren't really a kingdom, but they're trying to become a kingdom. It's a whole thing. To dispute treaty violations. But when she gets there and runs into Jace Ballinger, the newly crowned king of the Ballinger's kingdom, something happens to them that causes them to spend a lot of time together. Those who know, know. That's all I'm going to say because I think it's best to go into this blind and just be there for the ride. Guys, it was actually really cute. My dad one evening was asking me about what I was currently reading, and it was this book, so I was telling him a bit about this book, and he instantly became so invested in the story. And then every conversation we had after that, he was like, Sarah, what's happened in the story since the last time we spoke? And my dad has never been interested in the stories I've read until this book. He was even like, I'm gonna read that story after you. And I was like, sure you are. Doubt that, but okay. This is a fantasy that feels like it could actually happen in like an alternate universe. There's a bit of magic, but it doesn't play a huge role in the story. The best way I can describe the feel of the atmosphere is like Disney storybook vibes. This is what I was reading over the first half of the month, and I'm not exactly sure why it took me so long to read it. Maybe because this is the type of story that I like to read in larger increments, and so I was just having a hard time finding time when I could actually do that. I'm excited to continue with the series though, hopefully this month, and hopefully it doesn't take me 2 weeks to read. Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark I gave 4.5 stars, and it's a mafia romance that was a really fun time. I was pleasantly surprised. The tension between the mafia mobs. Ooh, it was so good. Reading the first book in a series and then getting excited because you know there are more books just like the one you read is the best. It's the best. This is the first book in the Brutal Birthright series, and in here we start off with following Ada, the youngest of the Gallo, who one evening kind of burns down another mafia mobs, the Griffins, library, just normal evening things. So the head of the Griffins and the Gallos come together and are like, all right, we can't keep going on like this. We can't keep feuding like this. So you know what they do? They set up their children to have an arranged marriage. You know, it might be a bit old-fashioned, but it's kind of smart. What better way to make the ultimate mafia mob than to combine two already powerful mafia groups? The only problem is that the future happy couple isn't so happy to be paired with each other. This is an enemies to lovers that is actually between enemies. Like, the characters have been brought up to despise each other and are not just enemies for some minute misunderstanding. I read this book so fast, it's super fast-paced. There's no lollygagging over what has happened or what will happen. Instead, the plot is bam, bam, bam. If in chapter 5 the characters got engaged, well then chapter 6 will be their wedding. The book also has beautiful illustrations. I'm not going to show you all because I don't want to spoil them, but that's instantly a selling point for me. I will say I don't think everyone will like the relationship in here, and I would definitely have some problems with it if it was not in a dark romance novel, because like you go into these books and you're kind of expecting some crazy toxic dynamic, which if that wasn't a regular romance novel, one could argue that the book would be promoting that those types of relationships are okay. But I think there's a difference when it comes to dark romance where the whole story is so out of left field that it's clearly fictional and shouldn't be compared to or sought after. On that note, let's venture to the other side of the romance genre and talk about my 4.75 romantic comedy of the month, yours truly. Abby Jimenez has done it again. I just need a minute. I want to say a huge thank you to Forever Publishing for sending me a copy of this book. I received this literally on my birthday. Dude, when I opened this package, I literally screamed. The neighbors were probably like, What was that? This was one of my most anticipated releases for 2023, and it did not disappoint. This is Bree's love story. If you don't already know, she is Alexis's best friend from Part of Your World. One of my favorite books. And at the beginning of Yours Truly, Bree is going through it. She is finalizing her divorce, her brother is going through kidney failure and cannot find a donor, and the promotion she wants is being threatened by the new ER doctor, Jacob. On top of all that, Bree and Jacob's first encounter is a bit of a mess, but these ill feelings quickly evaporate after Bree receives a letter from Jacob, the first of many more to come. Jacob, our male love interest, is too good to be true. This dude has a plant room in his house for succulents. Jacob, where's my ring? Wait, why is Jacob like the better male version of me? I related to Jacob and his inner thoughts on so many levels. There's this one part about how Jacob keeps his anxiety medication right by his coffee maker, and I was like, literally me. Abby Jimenez, did you get that from me? Because I will forget about my meds unless they're right by my coffee. Clearly I have my priorities straight. The atmosphere in this book gave me Grey's Anatomy vibes. I think I talk about Grey's Anatomy a slightly weird amount for someone who hasn't seen the show in like 5 years. This was so close to being a 5-star, but there is the miscommunication trope, which I didn't mind too much in here until there was communication, but then there was not believing of that communication, and I was just like, come on guys, I'm getting a bit tired of this. Still, I love this book a bunch. Don't skip the author's note at the end because it was really touching. It pulled on the heartstrings. You could tell that writing this book meant a lot to Abby Jimenez. My only 5-star of the month, which I guess is a bit of a spoiler if you haven't seen last week's video, but I guess I'll talk about it again, was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I want to read more books like this. I want to constantly be reading books like this. The more I think about this book, the more I love it. There's a little bit of everything I love in books in here. There's romance, a strong female protagonist, compelling characters, important themes and conversations, all while being funny. If you don't typically read historical fiction, this would be a great book to read to kind of dip your toes in the genre. It's going to be so hard to pick my personal book of the year at the end of the year because I'm just thinking back on all my 5-star reads so far, and there are some pretty strong contenders, and I just don't know how I'm going to choose. It's like picking your favorite child. Actually, probably not, but you know what I mean. All right, those are all the... Why? Why me? Alright, those were all the books I read in April. I think I had a pretty good reading month. Although it didn't start the strongest, I still had a lot of pretty enjoyable reads. I actually need to pick my next book today. I think I'm going to choose one for my spring TBR because I only read one for my TBR this month. No joke, my camera just died. Like in every wrap up, let me know your favorite book of the month down in the comments below. I shared with you what I read. Share with me what you read. Sharing is caring. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It'd really help me, my channel out a lot. You can also comment, interact, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. I'd really appreciate it. I hope you all are having a great day. I'm sending you guys great reading energy for May, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.